G'day, HM Hart here. Can you ever be re-idealized by a borderline who has massively, in maybe ending the relationship way or not, but drastically changing the entire relationship way? Can you be re-idealized by that person with BPD? And I've spoken on this before, so I'll make this a short video. But the answer is no. So once you've been idealized, and then maybe there's splits or devaluation where they come back somewhat, or they're more micro type of splits and they're not major devaluation splits. Maybe things get back to seemingly, quote, normal, what you think is the way who this person is and the way that they are, or that they will continue to be. But no, after the person with BPD gets to a certain level, the most major level of devaluation, which doesn't always end a relationship in ghosting, or what people call discarding, which is really a term that fits better for NPD than BPD. But they do leave, don't they? Many of them untreated, and they do, but not all of them. So, but you can't be re-idealized after a major split to devaluation that, if it doesn't end the relationship, because not all people with BPD are going to ghost or discard, then it drastically changes it to where, you might not know what's happening at that point in time, but you are going to drastically be working really hard to try to get back in their good graces, but you're not going to be able to. So this is where, in relationships that are ongoing, when the person with BPD has split you to that last sort of major devaluation, there's going to be no re-idealization, but the relationship still goes on. Wow, that's even more painful than prior to that, because that's usually where there's a lot of struggle. People with codependency, not consciously, are struggling for their own control needs, because you externalize a lot out. You're actually doing that, the rescuing, etc., because you're trying to get something back that you need, which is pretty human and not, quote, narcissistic. But so even with that, the person with BPD is now going to be beyond reach. And many people with BPD are clingy and needy and aren't going to leave you. Something not talked about a lot out there. And so for people in those relationship situations or dating situations, but especially relationships and marriages that may well last, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I think that's happening less in younger generations, but it's still happening, to where not everybody with BPD, when they do this major kind of like change, it's sort of like turning a right corner, and they can't ever come back and walk down the same street, because they're never going to re-idealize you again. But they don't all leave at that point, because lots of people have to do the very difficult work of leaving the person with BPD and trying to work it out from that side of the equation. Because so many people are ghosted and discarded these days, more than ever in the last 10 years. Didn't even used to hear about it prior to 10 or 12 years ago. I've been online for 26 years. So, but yeah, once there is a major enough devaluation split, which is hard to explain what does major enough mean, then no, they're not ever going to re-idealize you. And this is the tragedy of when people get ghosted, and then they get hoovered, or you self-reverse hoover, or you reverse hoover. However, you get back in touch with this person and you recycle the relationship. Going to be no honeymoon phase there. Going to be no re-idealization there whatsoever. So this is something people need to know, but people with codependency are so in denial. Right? You want that good feeling back. You want the person back who you thought they were. And this emotionally drives people beyond logic or reason to recycle often the relationship. But just know, every single time you do that, many people do it multiple times. Some people don't do it at all. Not everybody with BPD hoovers back. So a lot of people with BPD are going to keep moving. And whether you break up with them or they ghosted or discarded you, they're just going to keep moving. You become a rather out of sight, out of mind, quote, reality to them because it's in the past. It just fades into the black of how everybody's treated them badly and everything is everybody else's fault and a lot of other stuff like that. Point is, though, no, they don't ever re-idealize after, sorry, just trying to check the time here, after they get to that major devaluation split. And what's the difference between a major one, a micro one? Maybe I'll do another video on that. But so, blasted phone. Yeah, so it's really important to realize that it was too good to be true in the beginning. And this is something that I work with clients, 31 years experience now. I'm out here to help you if I resonate with you. It is so devastatingly confusing and ununderstandable, if I could put it that way, confounding to people that the person you met isn't who they really are, whether you're a woman who was with a man with BPD, or a man who was with a woman with BPD, or a lesbian woman that was with a woman with BPD, or a gay man that was with a man with BPD. All these relationship types, there's some differences between, whether, there's differences there, but there's so much commonality in the way these relationships play out, right? With people with untreated BPD. So they don't ever re-idealize. And yet, that's what you're chasing. That's what you're pursuing. That's what so many people are recycling back through relationships for. And many people will talk about, more men than not have talked about, it's the physical intimacy, and I just need that again. Even if I get that once more, and then I get, ghosted or whatever again. But, that's not even what that's about. I'll have more coming in another video. I mean, it could be about that too, but it's not the sole driver of that. Because I think to think that of men is really to miss a lot of what's really happening and going on for men who are human beings with a lot of feelings, whether they're feeling or whether they've met their feelings or whether they're acquainted with their feelings or not. So the key thing in all of this goes back to they were too good to be true in the beginning. And once they go through enough devaluation splits and emotional dysregulation, because they really believe, they have no idea where this is coming from in them, and they really believe that you make them angry, you make them depressed, you make them sad, you make them all the feelings that they have from triggered dysregulated emotion, which those are internal triggers. It's nothing you did, nothing you didn't do, nothing you could have done better. Please hear me on that. The idealization in the beginning wasn't really what you thought it was. It wasn't really real. Doesn't mean the person with BPD was doing it on purpose or that they were pretending. Not at all. That's not the way that goes. But once you've been devalued at least a few times or severely enough to that sort of last evaluation, which won't be the last if they're not the type to ghost and discard, but all these relationships with untreated people with BPD from the beginning, they are going to rupture. Why do I say that? Well, because it is a reenactment from the unconscious of the person with untreated BPD, a reenactment of that rupture in their first relationship with the first love object, with object other, mother. So, object other, mother, by the way, with people that go on to be diagnosed with BPD, never. If the mother was idealized in the sense of the infant's needs for mother, once a devaluation starts happening, because it happens in infancy for people who go on to be diagnosed with BPD, once that happens, mother never gets idealized ever again. Mother stays in a position of perpetual devaluation. And I can tell you that from my own personal experience. Then when I healed and recovered from BPD, though I was been no contact for about 33, 34 years now from the family of origin. And I would get through, heal, recover. It's been like 33 plus years. And I never mind, when you don't have BPD anymore, you don't idealize and devalue. And, everybody does a little bit of ups and downs with people, but not like the idealization devaluation in BPD. But in my experience, even growing up, like, I thought my mother was, frankly, a doorknob, a tool. She wasn't the brightest bulb, and there was nothing else happening there, and there was no bond. And no bond is the first unhealthy bond. So, which can happen to people, well, maybe not with codependency in the same way. But the bottom line is, even the first love object, the first object other, doesn't get re-idealized by the untreated borderline. So just know it was all too good to be true. That's so painful. I'm out here to work with you if you'd like to really work on the inner child healing, the family of origin work, the understanding the relationship, working through your own closure, working through to being able to have that healthy functional relationship tune with yourself to where you can know some feelings way better than what right now were the best feelings of your life when you were idealized by somebody with BPD. That whether you're finished recycling with them or not, or whether you've gone no contact yet with them or not, or whether you're still suffering and increasing your pain by being in contact with them, it takes years for them to change, and you have to radically accept where they're at right now. But no, you will never be re-idealized by a person with BPD once enough devaluations have occurred to get to a major devaluation that just is so a copy of, a reenactment of the way that usually it's mother, the way that mother was basically, that probably is where the word discard fits, at least in my experience, because I never bonded to my cluster B mother, comorbid BPD, NPD. And then the devaluation and what was happening through my infancy and early childhood, there would never be anything between her and I. Not that I didn't pursue trying as a child, but yeah. So there's no re-idealization, and I don't know if I ever idealized my mother at all. I don't think so. But she was in my devaluation books long into my recovery, and that was, decades ago. So, I mean, I worked all that out. I have forgiven her, but I am still no contact, and have been for almost 34 years. So anyway, no re-idealization in any relationship type coming from an untreated person with BPD. So you might want to consider that, and really, I hope you can hear me, because if you remember that and hang on to that, even though it hurts and you don't want to know that, maybe you could still be in that place, it might help you to work harder, get into therapy. I'm out here if I resonate with you, but get into therapy, because you want to stop pursuing and chasing those feelings again, thinking somehow, believing, hoping, in denial that you could be re-idealized and capture that amazing feeling, those amazing feelings that you had in the beginning of the relationship. It's not going to happen. So you need to get into therapy, and you need to find your way to amazing feelings from within, because healing and recovering from codependency in these relationships, like I've said, it's totally an inside job. No re-idealization comes from people with untreated BPD after they've devalued you significantly, and whether it ends the relationship or not. And you really need to make that a mantra of yours, that no matter how hard you try, pursue, chase, want to get back with them, or continue to try to have the relationship with those that don't, ghost or discard, you're just creating more suffering for yourself, and you're going to be more hurt by them. It's going to be more contentious. It's going to be the opposite of what the idealization was in the beginning. It's going to just keep getting worse, and you don't deserve that. And then you need to get into therapy, because you need to realize that the reason why you keep pursuing like that and keep hoping, and the codependent denial there, that really is where you need to learn more in therapy about where that's actually coming from, because really it has nothing to do with the cluster B. And you might be like, what? Of course it does. Of course it did. No, not really. Because when you do the family of origin work and inner child healing work, it's not the base of what you're really trying to recapture at all. So I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, and I hope that was helpful, because There's absolutely not going to be any re-idealization of you after you've been severely devalued. Maybe not the first couple times or first few times. Everybody with untreated BPD is different. But when it becomes that major, and they'll know just by how they feel, but they don't even understand what it's about consciously, there just will be no coming back at a certain point from a devaluation, and no re-idealization whatsoever, no matter what you do, no matter the relationship type, and whether they stay with you still or whether they ghost and discard. So all the recycling of these relationships in the world is really codependent denial and action, and codependence unknowingly, not in a conscious way, just signing up for more and more pain. So there's no re-idealization after a final split to devaluation, whether the relationship ends or it doesn't.